Alrighty, everybody. I have no idea where I've been leaving off. I have no idea what I was doing last and whatever else video. My brain is a shotgun effect. I don't know where I was. I'm just doing things. To catch you up on wherever I left off, what I'm working on right now is a fuel cell I took out of a parts vehicle I bought from a coworker. It was supposed to be a track car that lost interest in, and I got it for cheap and stole the fuel cell out of. Right now, what you see here is basically the fuel pump setup he had in the tank, kind of homemade. I don't think I'm really going to use that because what I'm trying to do is reuse the whole wiring from the truck itself. So I want to try and adapt the stock sending unit, as you can see here, stock sending unit, and somehow put in a tank sort of like that. But I need to figure out a way to hold this down, and I think I have an idea of making a ring and then putting a rubber gasket under the ring and just kind of have the ring pinch or sandwich this in. There'll be a rubber gasket either on top or underneath, depending on how I can sandwich this in here. This level sensor does not work anymore. I tried ohming it out to get a reading for it, but I had to look up the spec of the level sensor ohm. I don't know why it just stopped working. Pretty much I want to reuse this for two reasons: the vent up here and the tank pressure sensor, because I'm still going to use a lot of the stock things for this. So for right now, we're going to remove this. This is the stock fuel pump here. This is some Walbro. I think it's a 255 rated. I don't know. I have really no idea. It just says Walbro, and I try to look up the part number and have no real definitive answer. I think it's a 255. Not totally sure. So what I got here is I'm going to put this level sensor in. It has the same resistance reading as what the stock one spec-wise is supposed to have, so theoretically this level sensor will work in place of this float one, and I'm just going to splice off the wires here to wire this in, and they'll be fine for a tank level. I still have to get a rollover vent for this tank, but we are going to be modifying this. So this level sender is a stock one. Probably put it over here, maybe patch this up. I'm not totally sure. We put the vent here. Not completely sure at this point in time. Right now I'm trying to adapt the stock pickup, and I'm going to be changing that fuel pump out. That stock fuel pump is going to be going bye-bye. I might put that one in there or a different one for what I'm doing in the future with the supercharger. But this is kind of where I'm at. I might put more on after this, but that's about it. Alrighty, I don't know exactly where I left off on the last clip, but here I am with basically most of the tank done. So I adapted this tank to take the factory sending unit, and I think that's a fuel pump out of a 4.6 truck. I don't know the exact size of it. I think it's a 250 liter per hour pump, but I'm not entirely sure. This is the stock original pump. See, I cut the connector off because it has this is a Walbro pump, but I don't know what exact size it is. Being this is a 98, the fuel pressure regulator was in the tank, which was right here. We can kind of go down in this box. This is the regulator that the old basically pump head on it. So the regulator was in the tank. This was the old sending unit in the aftermarket tank that I had that I'm not using. Wrong sock that I'm not going to use. The stock level sender, which for some reason was not giving me an ohm reading, so apparently it's probably bad, but looked up parts. So instead of the factory level going to be on the sending unit here, because it would kind of get in the way it's positioned in this tank, on Summit I bought this stock sending unit that has the same resistance output as the stock one. So the two wires over here, I'll have to cut and splice them into these wires over here to have the factory level sender unit work. I looked it up. I don't remember exactly the ohm reading. I think it was like 10 ohms for empty and then 90 ohms for full, something like that. I'll have the spec on the screen. But to get that to work, basically I'm going to cut these wires and just splice them into this. So this will be my level sender. This is just the fuel pump. I rewired the fuel pump connector there for what this pump had, because this was the stock connector on the pump. It's what I'm going to use for the time being. I don't think this fuel pump is big enough for what I'm going to use the motor for. We'll find out. But for right now, it's cheaper for me to use this basically brand new pump. The only thing now I have to do is this is sealed. This is sealed. I just have to cut a gasket out of my retainer plate so that it will seal. And I have this kit of different sheets of different types of gasket. The thick cork gasket is probably what I'm going to use to make a gasket, and then use a little bit of RTV. The one cork gasket is the thicker of the. There's two sheets of cork gasket in here, and I think the thicker of the two one is rubber cork. Yeah, gasoline sealing. As I just throw that on the ground, and then so on this sending unit, I'm using the stock sending unit, computer wiring, yada yada for the time being. This is a pressure sensor. Being that I'm using this will work out fine. So the way this is going to be set up, the way this one's set up factory is this one is the feed. This is a vent. It's actually got a check valve. This is the check valve. But I will also be putting a vent on this one right here, and then this one's going to be a return, because I'm going to change this from a return list to a return style. So this will be a return, and then I just have to extend these wires, wire that into here, and then I have to, on the chassis, extend the wires all the way back. But that's basically the fuel tank. So right now I'm going to throw this fuel pump away, and I'm going to make a gasket for this, and gasket this down and seal it up and be done with the tank until it has to be installed into the truck. Alrighty, here's the tank fully assembled. The only thing about this tank is the way it's going to be mounted on the frame. It's probably going to be different. This I'm not going to mount. I'm going to have the fab shop. I'm going to take this, the fab shop. I'm going to take this to mount it. They might cut this off. They might pitch the whole thing except for the fuel cell and see how they're going to mount it on here. I am probably going to cut this bracket or the support for the spare tire out. But other than that, the tank, the sending unit is sealed. I have my little adapters here for the fuel. This one's a 3/8, this one's a 5/16, so I can have AN-6 or JIC-6. They're kind of the same, a little bit. Other than that, that's pretty much installed, sealed, installed. The tank's pretty much installed. Tank's been cleaned out. There's caps on all the ends, so nothing can get in it. I'll have to get some pigtails and extend the wires, but the harness is just kind of laying on top of the cab. It's been pulled back through the frame rails to that point and then laid on top of the cab because of the rear suspension. It's to get it out of their way. I removed the lines that were in the frame rail for the stock tank, for the charcoal canister, the fuel line up to the fuel filter, and the brake line up to the union that's in the frame rail at the transfer case. So that's pretty much the fuel tank. I'll go over more of the fuel system later. That line's just laying down over there. I don't think I'll ever be reusing that. I'm trying to just get this to a point where they have a good starting basis to give me the rear suspension, finish the front, and then strengthen up the frame a little bit. The cage will be later, once I get this running and driving and just putz around a little bit with it. But that's pretty much it. That's the fuel tank, or the fuel cell, or however you want to call it. This is 20 gallons, so it's what I'll be using. The stock tank's like 19.5, so this will be perfectly fine for what I want to use it for, and I want it behind the axle for weight reasons. But that's pretty much it.